Welcome back to True Footballing Icons, where we celebrate the players who shaped football history. Before we begin, if you enjoy discovering the stories behind football's greatest legends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from and which football icon you'd love to see featured next. Your support helps this channel continue to grow, and it allows us to keep bringing you the stories of the players who made us fall in love with the beautiful game. Football isn't just about trophies. It isn't just about goals. It isn't just about statistics. It's about unforgettable moments. The moments that made stadiums erupt. The moments that inspired generations. The moments that became part of football history. This week, we've celebrated 7 extraordinary footballers. 7 different careers. 7 different journeys. 7 different paths to greatness. A captain who inspired everyone around him. A striker who thrived on chaos. A defender who had no weaknesses. A midfielder who could do everything. A magician who delivered when the pressure was greatest. A winger everyone understood, yet nobody could stop. And a genius who made football look like art. These are the stories behind the legends. These are the moments that made them immortal. This is True Footballing Icons. Enjoy the collection. Some footballers are remembered for their goals. Some are remembered for their trophies. Others are remembered for their skill. Bryan Robson is remembered for something else. Leadership. When Manchester United needed inspiration, they looked to Bryan Robson. When England needed a captain, they looked to Bryan Robson. When a match needed changing, they looked to Bryan Robson. That is why football gave him a nickname few players ever earn. Captain Marvel. Born in Chester Street, England, in 1957, Robson quickly developed a reputation as a player who refused to accept defeat. He possessed determination that few players could match. From an early age, he understood that talent could win matches. Character could win careers. His professional journey began with West Bromwich Albion. There, Robson's all-action style quickly caught attention. He could tackle. He could pass. He could score. Most importantly, he could lead. Soon, the biggest clubs in England were interested. In 1981, Manchester United made him Britain's most expensive footballer. The pressure was enormous. The expectations were huge. But Bryan Robson never looked intimidated. Instead, he embraced the responsibility. Manchester United were searching for a leader. A player capable of dragging the team forward when things became difficult. They found exactly that. Week after week, Robson led by example. He tackled harder, ran further, fought longer. He demanded the best from everyone around him. The supporters loved him. His teammates trusted him. His managers relied on him. Because Bryan Robson never asked others to do something he wouldn't do himself. He was always first into the battle. One thing defined his career more than almost anything else: courage. Robson played through pain. He battled injuries. He suffered setbacks that would have ended many careers. Yet somehow he always returned. For England, he became captain. The leader of his country. The player expected to carry the hopes of millions. And when England needed a fast start at the 1982 World Cup, Robson delivered. Just 27 seconds into England's opening match against France, he scored. It remains one of the fastest goals in World Cup history. Big stage. Big moment. Big player. Throughout the 1980s, Robson became one of the most complete midfielders in football. He could defend. He could attack. He could dominate matches. And he could inspire those around him. Many footballers had more natural talent. Few had greater influence. Then came the arrival of Sir Alex Ferguson, a manager determined to transform Manchester United. Every great manager needs leaders on the pitch. Ferguson had Bryan Robson. Together, they helped lay the foundations for what would become one of football's greatest dynasties. The trophies eventually arrived. FA Cups, European success, silverware that Manchester United supporters had craved for years. And at the centre of it all stood Captain Marvel. Leading, driving, inspiring. Football fans often talk about goals, assists, records, statistics. Those things matter, but they don't fully explain Bryan Robson. What explains Bryan Robson is influence. The ability to make everyone around him better. The ability to raise standards. The ability to lead. Today, many Manchester United supporters still place him among the greatest captains in the club's history. Some place him at the very top. Not because he won the most trophies, but because of what he represented. Commitment, determination, leadership. Football has seen more skillful midfielders. Football has seen more creative midfielders. Football has seen midfielders who scored more goals. But football has rarely seen a captain more respected than Bryan Robson. When teammates looked around during difficult moments, they saw him. When supporters needed belief, they saw him. When England and Manchester United needed a leader, they saw him. And that was enough. Football remembers great players. Football remembers great teams. Football remembers great moments. But football also remembers great leaders. Because leadership cannot be measured by goals. Leadership cannot be measured by trophies. Leadership cannot be measured by statistics. Leadership is measured by the people willing to follow you. And few footballers have ever inspired more people than Bryan Robson. That is why Bryan Robson will always remain a true footballing icon. Not because he was the most gifted player on the pitch. Not because he chased headlines. Not because he demanded attention. But because when his team needed someone to lead the way, Bryan Robson was always the first to step forward. And that is why football will always remember him as Captain Marvel. What is your favorite Bryan Robson memory? Luis Suárez is one of the greatest strikers football has ever seen. He's also one of the most controversial. Some fans love him. Some fans hate him. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. At his best, he was unstoppable. Because football has produced many great goal scorers. Football has produced many great winners. But very few players have combined brilliance and chaos quite like Luis Suárez. Born in Salto, Uruguay, in 1987, Suárez grew up far from the glamour of Europe's elite stadiums. His family struggled financially. Life was difficult. But from an early age, one thing became obvious. Luis Suárez hated losing. Not disliked. Not avoided. Hated. That obsession would drive him to greatness. And sometimes, to trouble. After arriving in Europe, Suárez quickly rose through Groningen and Ajax. Goals followed everywhere. Defenders struggled to contain him. But even then, there were signs that Suárez was different. More intense. More emotional. More driven. For most strikers, football is a game. For Luis Suárez, football felt personal. Every tackle mattered. Every duel mattered. Every goal mattered. Then came the 2010 World Cup. A moment football still debates today. Uruguay against Ghana. The final seconds of extra time. A place in the World Cup semi-finals on the line. The ball was heading into the net. Uruguay were finished. Their dream was over. Then Luis Suárez did something nobody expected. He used his hand. Red card. Penalty. Chaos. Some called it cheating. Others called it sacrifice. Suárez didn't care. Because Ghana missed the penalty. Uruguay survived. And Luis Suárez walked off the pitch having changed football history forever. Loved by some, hated by others, ignored by nobody. Then came Liverpool, and the greatest football of his career. The 2013-14 season wasn't normal. It wasn't even elite. It was ridiculous. 31 Premier League goals. No penalties. Missed the opening weeks of the season. Yet defenders still couldn't stop him. Long-range goals. Impossible finishes. Nutmegs. Free kicks. Volleys. Goals that seemed to defy logic. For a few months, Luis Suárez looked like a man playing a different sport. The frightening thing was that he never stopped hunting. Even after scoring. Even after winning. Even after dominating. He always wanted more. Defenders didn't just respect Suárez. They feared him. Because even on his worst day, he only needed one chance. Then came Barcelona. And one of the greatest attacking trios football has ever seen. Lionel Messi. Neymar. Luis Suárez. MSN. A front three that overwhelmed football. Many thought Suárez would become a supporting player beside Messi. Instead, he became even more dangerous. Goals. Assists. Trophies. Records. Champions League glory. And proof that he belonged among the greatest forwards of his generation. But the contradictions never disappeared. That was the Suárez story. Hero and villain. Genius and chaos. Brilliance and controversy. Sometimes all in the same match. Most footballers are easy to define. Luis Suárez isn't. Then came Atletico Madrid. Many believed his best years were over. Barcelona had moved on. Critics said he was finished. Luis Suárez disagreed. Goals followed. Victories followed. And Atletico won La Liga. Once again, he proved people wrong. For Uruguay, he became a national hero. Their all-time leading goalscorer. A player who carried the hopes of an entire nation. And a player who never stopped fighting. Football has produced more elegant strikers. Football has produced quicker strikers. Football has produced players who behaved better. But football has rarely produced a striker more dangerous than Luis Suárez. Because when the ball arrived in the box, anything could happen. Football remembers the goals. Football remembers the trophies. Football remembers the controversy. But football also remembers the fear. Because for more than a decade, defenders around the world knew one thing. If Luis Suárez got a chance, the game could change in an instant. And that is why Luis Suárez will always remain a true footballing icon. Not because he was perfect. Not because he was universally loved. But because football produced a genius it could never fully control. And when that genius was at his best, nobody could stop him. What is your favorite Luis Suárez memory? Football is a game of weaknesses. The fastest players struggle defensively. The strongest players struggle technically. The goalscorers don't always track back. The defenders don't always create chances. Every footballer has flaws. Every footballer has limitations. Except perhaps one. Because for nearly 20 years, Philipp Lahm came closer to footballing perfection than almost anyone the game has ever seen. Born in Munich, Germany, in 1983, Lahm didn't look like a future football superstar. He wasn't physically imposing. He wasn't towering over opponents. He wasn't blessed with extraordinary strength. In a Giants game, Philipp Lahm looked ordinary. Yet he would go on to become one of the greatest players of his generation. How? Because football isn't only played with your feet. Football is played with your mind. From the moment he joined Bayern Munich's academy, coaches noticed something different. Lahm always seemed to know what would happen next. He saw danger before it appeared. He found solutions before problems arrived. Again, and again, and again. That would become the story of his entire career. Most players solve one problem. Philipp Lahm solved all of them. Need a right back? Lahm. Need a left back? Lahm. Need a defensive midfielder? Lahm. Need a captain? Lahm. Need someone to stop the world's best winger? Lahm. Whatever the challenge was, Philipp Lahm usually had the answer. After developing on loan at Stuttgart, he returned to Bayern Munich ready for the biggest stage. And almost immediately, the football world took notice. The 2006 World Cup. Germany. Opening game. Home soil. Millions watching. Then came the moment. Lahm cut inside. Bent the ball into the top corner. One of the greatest opening goals in World Cup history. Big stage. Big moment. Big player. As the years passed, Lahm became something incredibly rare. Reliable. Not for one season. Not for 2 seasons. For almost 2 decades. Managers trusted him. Teammates trusted him. Supporters trusted him. Because mistakes were so rare. Then came Pep Guardiola. One of football's greatest tactical minds. A manager obsessed with intelligence. And even Guardiola seemed amazed by Lahm. Pep once called him the most intelligent player I have ever coached. Think about that for a moment. This is the same manager who coached Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets. Yet when Guardiola spoke about football intelligence, he spoke about Philipp Lahm. That tells you everything. At Bayern Munich, success followed him everywhere. League titles, domestic cups, European glory. Then came the treble. Bundesliga, German Cup, Champions League. One of the greatest seasons in Bayern Munich history. Led by one of the greatest captains in Bayern Munich history. Yet the greatest moment of Lahm's career was still waiting. The 2014 World Cup. Brazil. The biggest stage in football. Germany arrived carrying enormous expectation. Lahm arrived carrying enormous responsibility. Then football witnessed one of its most astonishing results. Germany 7. Brazil 1. A result so unbelievable it still feels impossible. But Lahm and Germany weren't finished. The World Cup final awaited. Germany against Argentina. Everything on the line. One moment from immortality. When Mario Götze scored in extra time, Germany became world champions. And Philipp Lahm lifted the World Cup. The perfect ending. For the perfect captain. But perhaps the most remarkable statistic of all came away from the spotlight. Most fans never even think about it. Until they hear it. Thousands of tackles. Hundreds of matches. World Cups. Champions League nights. League title races. Not one red card. Ever. Think about how extraordinary that is. Competing at the highest level for almost 20 years. And never once crossing the line. Discipline. Control. Intelligence. Problem solving. Everything that defined Philipp Lahm. Unlike many legends, he didn't stay too long. He didn't wait for decline. He didn't chase another contract. He retired on his own terms. A champion. A captain. A World Cup winner. A Bayern Munich icon. Football has produced faster players. Football has produced stronger players. Football has produced more famous players. But football has rarely produced a player with so few weaknesses. No controversy. No drama. No excuses. No distractions. Just excellence. Year after year. Season after season. Football remembers goals. Football remembers trophies. Football remembers moments. But football should also remember understanding. Because understanding took Philipp Lahm to the very top of the game. While others relied on power, he relied on intelligence. While others relied on athleticism, he relied on solutions. And that made him special. That is why Philipp Lahm will always remain a true footballing icon. Not because he was the loudest. Not because he was the flashiest. Not because he demanded attention. But because whenever football presented a problem, Philipp Lahm always seemed to have the answer. Some players are remembered for what they could do. Philipp Lahm is remembered for what he couldn't do. Almost nothing. What is your favorite Philipp Lahm memory? Some footballers master one position. Some footballers master one role. Some footballers spend their entire careers doing one thing brilliantly. Michael Essien was different. Because whatever a team needed, Michael Essien could do it. Need a destroyer? Need a runner? Need a leader? Need a goal scorer? Need a right back? Michael Essien usually had the answer. And that is why he became the midfielder every manager wanted. Born in Accra, Ghana, in 1982, Essien's journey began far away from football's biggest stages. There were no guarantees, no shortcuts, no easy route. Everything had to be earned. And from an early age, one thing stood out: his determination. While others slowed down, Essien kept running. While others gave up, Essien kept fighting. While others looked for excuses, Essien looked for solutions. That mentality would define his entire career. His rise through Bastia and Lyon quickly attracted attention. Not because he was flashy. Not because he chased headlines. Because he was effective. Relentlessly effective. He could win the ball. Carry the ball. Pass the ball. Score goals. And he did it all with extraordinary power. Soon Europe's biggest clubs were watching. Then came the moment that changed everything. Chelsea. In 2005, Chelsea paid a huge fee to bring Essien to Stamford Bridge. Some questioned the price. Some wondered whether he was worth it. Those questions didn't last long. Because the Premier League quickly discovered what France already knew. Michael Essien was the complete midfielder. And he arrived during one of the toughest eras football has ever seen. Think about the midfielders around him. Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, Paul Scholes, Patrick Vieira, Xabi Alonso, Claude Makélélé. Yet Michael Essien belonged in every conversation. That tells you everything about the level he reached. Then there was José Mourinho, one of football's most demanding managers, one of football's toughest judges, a manager who trusted very few players completely. Michael Essien became one of them. Mourinho loved players who solved problems, and Essien solved problems everywhere. Need defensive cover? Essien. Need energy? Essien. Need leadership? Essien. Need someone to play out of position for the team? Essien. No complaints. No excuses. Just commitment. Managers dream of players like that. What made Essien special wasn't one particular skill. It was the complete package. Power, technique, discipline, athleticism, determination, versatility. Most players have weaknesses. Michael Essien seemed determined to remove his. Then came the goals. And some of them were unforgettable. Against Arsenal, he unleashed one of the most powerful strikes the Premier League has ever seen. The ball flew into the net. The stadium exploded. A goal that perfectly captured his game. Power, precision, authority. But his masterpiece arrived on Europe's biggest stage. Chelsea against Barcelona. Champions League semi-final. The ball dropped from the sky. The angle looked impossible. Most players would have taken a touch. Most players would have played it safe. Michael Essien wasn't most players. The volley crashed into the top corner. One of the greatest goals in Champions League history. And for a moment, football saw everything that made him special. The power, the technique, the timing, the confidence, the brilliance. Yet Michael Essien's story was bigger than Chelsea. It was bigger than club football. It was about Ghana. As Ghana emerged onto the world stage, Essien became one of its greatest symbols. A player proving that African footballers could dominate the very highest level. An inspiration to millions. A source of pride for an entire nation. Then came the injuries. And this is where the story changes. Because when football fans talk about Michael Essien, they don't just talk about how good he was. They talk about how good he could have been. The injuries didn't destroy his career. They didn't erase his greatness. But they took something away. Years. Prime years. Years that might have elevated him even further. And that is what makes his story so fascinating. At his best, Michael Essien wasn't just one of the best midfielders in England. He was one of the best midfielders in the world. And many believe we never truly saw the very best version of him. Football has produced more elegant midfielders. Football has produced more creative midfielders. Football has produced players with greater fame. But football has rarely produced a midfielder so complete. Managers trusted him. Teammates depended on him. Supporters adored him. Because they all knew the same thing. Whatever the challenge was, Michael Essien would give everything to overcome it. Football remembers the artists. Football remembers the magicians. Football remembers the superstars. But football should also remember the players who made everything work. The players who sacrificed for the team. The players who solved problems. Michael Essien was one of those players. A warrior. A leader. A champion. A complete midfielder. Some players become specialists. Michael Essien became indispensable. Because whatever the challenge was, whatever the position was, whatever the game demanded, Michael Essien usually had the answer. And that is why Michael Essien will always remain a true footballing icon. What is your favorite Michael Essien memory? Some footballers enjoy the big occasion. Some footballers survive it. Rivaldo lived for it. When the pressure grew, when the stakes became greater, when millions were watching, Rivaldo became even better. Because throughout his career, one thing became impossible to ignore. When football needed something extraordinary, Rivaldo delivered it. Born in Recife, Brazil, in 1972, Rivaldo's journey was never meant to be easy. He grew up in poverty, often undernourished as a child. Many doubted whether his slight frame could ever survive professional football. But greatness has never been measured by size, only by courage. And from the very beginning, Rivaldo played with fearless belief. The kind of belief that cannot be taught. Where others saw impossible, Rivaldo saw opportunity. After making his name in Brazil, Europe came calling. Deportivo La Coruña became his first step. Then came Barcelona. One of football's biggest clubs. One of football's biggest pressures. And Rivaldo embraced every second of it. Barcelona didn't just sign a great player. They signed their leader. Their match winner. Their inspiration. When Barcelona struggled, they looked to Rivaldo. When they needed creativity, they looked to Rivaldo. When they needed a goal, they looked to Rivaldo. Again, and again, and again. What made Rivaldo different wasn't simply his talent. Football has always had talented players. It was his belief. Most footballers see an impossible opportunity and choose the safe option. Rivaldo never did. He believed impossible goals were there to be scored. Impossible passes were there to be played. Impossible moments were there to be created. And then there was his left foot. Perhaps the greatest weapon of his generation. Defenders knew exactly what he wanted to do. They knew he wanted to shift the ball onto his left. They knew what was coming. The problem was, they still couldn't stop him. Long-range screamers. Impossible volleys. Free kicks. Curling finishes. Thunderous strikes. Delicate chips. His left foot wasn't just a weapon. It was an event. In 1999, football recognized his brilliance. Rivaldo won the Ballon d'Or, the highest individual honor in world football. For one season. He wasn't simply one of the world's best players. He was the world's best player. Yet the greatest night of his club career was still to come. Camp Nou. Barcelona against Valencia. The final league match of the season. Lose. And Barcelona miss out on the Champions League. Everything rested on one night. The pressure was unbearable. But pressure had never frightened Rivaldo. It inspired him. He scored once. Barcelona still needed more. He scored again. The tension only grew. Then came the moment football will never forget. The ball dropped from the night sky. His back was to goal. 90 minutes were almost complete. Most players would have brought it down. Most players would have looked for a teammate. Rivaldo didn't. He launched himself into the air. A perfect bicycle kick. The ball flew into the top corner. The new camp erupted. Hat trick. Victory. Champions League qualification secured. One of the greatest individual performances football has ever witnessed. Because when football needed something extraordinary, Rivaldo delivered it. Then came the biggest stage of all. The 2002 FIFA World Cup. Brazil's golden generation. Ronaldo. Ronaldinho. Cafu. Roberto Carlos. And quietly, Rivaldo. History often remembers Ronaldo's 8 goals. It remembers Ronaldinho's magic against England. But Brazil do not lift that World Cup without Rivaldo. He scored 5 goals. Created countless chances. Linked every attack. Controlled the tempo. Made the right decision at the right time. When Brazil needed calm, Rivaldo gave them calm. When Brazil needed quality, Rivaldo gave them quality. When Brazil needed brilliance, Rivaldo delivered it. Throughout the tournament, he never looked rushed. Never looked nervous. Never looked overwhelmed. The bigger the occasion became, the calmer he looked. That confidence spread through the entire team. Because when Rivaldo had the ball, Brazil believed. Opponents believed too. Not because they expected him to do the ordinary. Because they feared he might produce something extraordinary. One touch. One strike. One moment. That was all he needed. Football has produced faster players. Football has produced stronger players. Football has produced bigger personalities. But football has rarely produced a player who thrived under pressure quite like Rivaldo. Some players become legends through consistency. Some become legends through longevity. Rivaldo became a legend through moments. Moments that made supporters leap from their seats. Moments that made commentators lose their voices. Moments that children tried to recreate in parks and playgrounds all over the world. That is football's greatest gift. Creating memories that never disappear. That is why Rivaldo will always remain a true footballing icon. Not because he won the Ballon d'Or. Not because he became a world champion. Not because he scored hundreds of goals. But because when the game demanded something extraordinary, Rivaldo delivered it. Again. And again. And again. Some players wait for the perfect moment. Rivaldo created it. And that is why his greatest goals will never simply be remembered as goals. They will be remembered as moments that reminded us why we fell in love with football. What is your favorite Rivaldo moment? Imagine sitting an exam, where someone gives you every answer before it even begins. Every question, every solution, every trick. And somehow, you still fail. That was what facing Arjen Robben felt like. Every manager had the game plan. Every defender studied the footage. Every teammate knew exactly what he wanted to do. Cut inside. Onto his left foot. Shoot. Everyone knew what was coming. And somehow, nobody could stop it. Football has produced countless brilliant wingers. Players with endless tricks. Endless skills. Endless unpredictability. Arjen Robben built a legendary career by perfecting one move. Not dozens. One. Born in Bedum, the Netherlands, in 1984, Robben looked different from the very beginning. Lightning quick. Fearless. Direct. While other young players enjoyed possession, Robben wanted to attack. Every touch had purpose. Every run had intent. Every sprint asked defenders the same question. Can you stop me? Most couldn't. His talent quickly earned him a move to Groningen before PSV Eindhoven recognized they had something special. At PSV he wasn't just exciting. He was becoming ruthless. Goals. Assists. Explosive pace. A left foot that already frightened defenders. Europe had taken notice. Then came Chelsea. Jose Mourinho had just arrived. Chelsea weren't simply trying to compete. They wanted to dominate English football. Mourinho wanted winners. He wanted fearless competitors. He wanted Arjen Robben. The Premier League had never seen anything quite like him. Every time Robben received the ball, supporters leaned forward. Defenders stepped backwards. Because they knew exactly what was coming. He would slow down, tempt the defender closer, explode past him, cut inside, left foot, shot. Simple, predictable, devastating. Managers spent hours preparing for him. Video analysts replayed the same clips. Coaches repeated the same instruction before every match. Don't let Robben come inside. Show him onto his right foot. Double up if you have to. It sounded simple. Until the whistle blew. Because within minutes, he had already done it. Again. And again. And again. Chelsea won back-to-back Premier League titles. League Cups. Domestic honours. Robben wasn't the only star. But he became one of Mourinho's most dangerous weapons. Yet football has a cruel way of testing greatness. Just as Robben's career gathered momentum, his body began to betray him. Muscle injuries, hamstring problems, long spells watching from the sidelines. The questions started. Was he too fragile? Could his body survive at the very highest level? Would he ever fulfill his extraordinary potential? For many players, those questions become impossible to answer. For Arjen Robben, they became fuel. In 2007, Real Madrid came calling. Another giant. Another challenge. Another dressing room filled with world-class talent. The expectations became even greater. Madrid demanded brilliance every single week. There were no excuses. No second chances. Only victories mattered. Robben embraced the pressure. His pace terrified defenders. His dribbling humiliated fullbacks. His left foot continued to produce moments of genius. But once again, injuries interrupted his rhythm. Critics questioned whether Robben would always be remembered as a player of incredible talent, who spent too much time fighting his own body. Most careers begin to fade under that weight. Most players accept the limits placed upon them. Arjen Robben refused. Because deep down, he believed something every great player believes. Not that he was lucky. Not that he was gifted. But that if he kept coming back, kept improving, kept believing, eventually the football world would see the very best version of Arjen Robben. In 2009, Bayern Munich gave Arjen Robben a new beginning. It would become the club where talent became greatness. The speed was still there. The dribbling was still there. But something else had changed. Experience, patience, mastery. Robben no longer relied only on explosive pace. He relied on perfect timing. He knew exactly when to accelerate, exactly when to slow the game down, exactly when to strike. The older he became, the smarter he became. Managers prepared for him. Fullbacks prepared for him. Entire defensive systems were built around stopping one man. Don't let Robben inside. Force him onto his right foot. Double up. Stay tight. Never dive in. The plan was perfect. Until Robben touched the ball. Cut inside. Left foot. Goal. Football teaches us that to stay at the top, you must constantly reinvent yourself. Arjen Robben proved something completely different. Sometimes, you don't need to reinvent yourself. You simply need to perfect yourself. Then came 2012. The Champions League final. At Bayern Munich's own Allianz Arena. A dream opportunity. A dream ending. Instead, came heartbreak. The match went to penalties. Earlier in extra time, Robben had the chance to win it. A penalty. The weight of an entire football club resting on one kick. Petr Cech saved it. Chelsea lifted the trophy. Bayern players collapsed to the ground. Robben walked away devastated. The criticism was brutal. People questioned whether he could ever deliver on football's biggest stage. Many great players would never recover from a night like that. Some never do. But Arjen Robben had spent his entire career answering doubts. Injuries. Criticism. Setbacks. This would be no different. 1 year later. Wembley Stadium. Another Champions League final. Another chance. Another defining moment. Football doesn't often offer redemption. When it does, you have to take it. The score was level. The clock ticked towards 90 minutes. Extra time seemed inevitable. Then Frank Ribery found Robben. One touch. A second touch. The goalkeeper rushed forward. Everything slowed down. Robben stayed calm. He slipped the ball past Roman Weidenfeller. Into the corner. Goal. Wembley erupted. Bayern erupted. Arjen Robben fell to his knees. 1 year after the deepest disappointment of his career, he had written its greatest ending. Because champions are not remembered for never falling. They're remembered for getting back up. Everyone knew what was coming. And once again, nobody could stop it. Then came Brazil. The 2014 FIFA World Cup. Spain stood in the Netherlands' way. The reigning world champions. The team that had dominated world football. Then Robben received the ball. He sprinted past Sergio Ramos. Past Gerard Piqué. Leaving two of the world's finest defenders chasing shadows. He finished with perfect composure. One of the greatest counter-attacking goals in World Cup history. It wasn't just speed. It was timing, belief, precision. Everything that had defined his career. Football has seen faster players. Football has seen trickier dribblers. Football has seen more unpredictable wingers. But football has never seen a player master one movement quite like Arjen Robben. Some players spend a lifetime searching for the perfect style. Robben found his. And spent 20 years making it unstoppable. That isn't predictability. That's perfection. His trophy cabinet tells its own story. League titles in England. League titles in Spain. League titles in Germany. Champions League winner. Domestic cups. Individual honors. One of Bayern Munich's greatest ever players. One of the Netherlands' greatest ever footballers. But trophies alone don't explain Arjen Robben. Ask defenders what they remember. Ask managers. Ask supporters. They'll all tell you the same thing. They knew. Everyone knew. Cut inside. Left foot. Goal. They just couldn't stop it. Football teaches us that greatness comes from endless tricks, endless skills, endless surprises. Arjen Robben taught us something completely different. Master one thing. Perfect it. Trust it. Have the courage to use it. Even when the whole world knows it's coming. Because true greatness isn't about keeping people guessing. It's about being so good that even when they know exactly what you're about to do, they still can't stop you. That is mastery. That is Arjen Robben. And that is why he will always remain a true footballing icon. What is your favorite Arjen Robben moment? Some footballers make the game look difficult. Some make it look easy. Zinedine Zidane made it look like art. Every touch felt effortless. Every turn looked graceful. Every pass seemed perfectly timed. He played football with a calmness few players have ever possessed. But beneath that elegance burned a fire that made him one of the fiercest competitors football has ever seen. Because the greatest contradiction in football history wasn't tactical. It was Zidane himself. Calm on the ball. Fire in the soul. Born in Marseille in 1972 to Algerian parents, Zidane grew up surrounded by hard work, pride, and family. Football wasn't simply a game. It was freedom. It was expression. It was opportunity. On the streets of La Castellane, the ball became an extension of his body. While others chased the game, Zidane seemed to slow it down. Even as a young player, coaches noticed something impossible to teach. He never appeared rushed. The match could be frantic. The crowd could be roaring. Opponents could be closing from every direction. Zidane remained calm. That calmness became his greatest weapon. His first touch. His balance. His vision. His famous roulette turn. Everything flowed together as though football obeyed his rhythm instead of its own. His talent carried him to Cannes before Bordeaux recognized they had discovered something extraordinary. France had produced gifted midfielders before. But nobody quite like this. He wasn't the quickest. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the loudest. He simply saw football differently. Where others saw pressure, Zidane saw space. Where others rushed, he paused. Where others forced passes, he waited for the perfect one. Watching him play felt less like sport, and more like watching an artist complete a masterpiece. Europe soon came calling. Juventus. One of football's greatest clubs. One of football's greatest demands. Italian football in the 1990s was unforgiving. Every mistake punished. Every weakness exposed. Every match a battle. It was the perfect place to discover whether Zidane's elegance could survive football's toughest stage. It didn't survive. It flourished. Serie A defenders tried to rush him. They tried to intimidate him. They tried to disrupt his rhythm. Nothing seemed to work. Because no matter how fast the game became, Zidane refused to play at anyone else's speed. He made the world's hardest league slow down. League titles followed. European finals followed. Individual honors followed. The football world had discovered its newest genius. But greatness isn't measured by club football alone. It is measured by what you do when your country asks everything of you. France. A nation holding its breath. A World Cup on home soil. Expectation unlike anything Zidane had ever experienced. The pressure was enormous. The entire country looked towards one man. Zinedine Zidane. The final arrived. Brazil stood on the other side. The greatest football nation on earth. the reigning world champions. If ever there was a stage made to overwhelm a player, this was it. But the bigger the occasion became, the calmer Zidane looked. A corner swung into the box. He rose above everyone. Header. Goal. Then another corner. Another leap. Another header. Another goal. France were champions of the world. And Zidane had delivered when football demanded everything. Because that's what separated him from so many great players. When the pressure increased, his football became even more beautiful. But there was another side to Zidane. A side people often forget. Until it appeared. The elegant artist could become a relentless competitor in an instant. He hated losing. He hated being bullied. He hated disrespect. The same fire that drove his greatness sometimes pushed him beyond the limit. That was the contradiction, the mystery, the brilliance of Zinedine Zidane. Calm on the ball, fire in the soul, and the greatest chapters of his story were still to come. In 2001, Real Madrid made Zinedine Zidane the most expensive footballer in history. A transfer that shocked the football world. A transfer carrying impossible expectations. When clubs spend world record money, they expect world-class performances. Real Madrid weren't simply building a team. They were building the Galacticos. Figo, Roberto Carlos, later Ronaldo, David Beckham. A collection of superstars. Yet even among them, Zidane often looked like the finest footballer on the pitch. He didn't rely on speed. He didn't rely on strength. He relied on something much rarer. Control. Every touch had purpose. Every pass had meaning. Every movement slowed the game to his rhythm. Calm on the ball. Fire in the soul. Then came Glasgow. The Champions League final. Real Madrid against Bayer Leverkusen. The score was level. Half-time was approaching. Roberto Carlos lifted a hopeful ball high into the night sky. It drifted towards the edge of the penalty area. Most players would have taken a touch. Most players would have tried to keep the ball alive. Zinedine Zidane saw something nobody else did. Without hesitation, he struck the dropping ball first time. A left-footed volley. Perfectly clean. Perfectly balanced. Perfectly placed. The ball crashed into the top corner. Silence. Then disbelief. Then celebration. Many have called it the greatest goal ever scored in a Champions League final. Not because of the power. Not because of the technique. But because only one player in the stadium would even have attempted it. Calm on the ball. Fire in the soul. Years passed. More trophies followed. League titles. Champions League success. Individual honors. The admiration of teammates and opponents alike. Then came one final World Cup. Germany. 34 years old. Many believed Zidane's greatest days were behind him. They were wrong. Against Spain, he controlled the game. Against Portugal, he led France to the final. Then came Brazil. The reigning world champions. A team filled with legends. Ronaldo. Ronaldinho. Kaká. Adriano. Roberto Carlos. Yet one man owned the night. Every touch drew applause. Every turn embarrassed defenders. Every pass opened space. He glided through one of the greatest teams ever assembled. As though they weren't there. It wasn't just a great performance. It was a football masterclass. France reached another World Cup final. Once again, the biggest stage belonged to Zidane. Then came one of football's most unforgettable moments. The World Cup final. Italy. Extraordinary pressure. Millions watching around the world. Inside 7 minutes, Zidane stepped forward to take a penalty. Most players would choose power. Most players would choose safety. Zidane chose courage. A Panenka. The ball floated gently onto the crossbar, before bouncing over the line. One of the boldest penalties in football history. Only Zidane would attempt something so audacious. On football's biggest stage. Calm on the ball. Fire in the soul. Then, football witnessed the moment that would define headlines for years. Marco Materazzi spoke. Zidane reacted. One headbutt. One red card. One final walk past the World Cup trophy. It remains one of the most shocking moments the sport has ever seen. The greatest player on the pitch, leaving the greatest stage, in the most unexpected way imaginable. Football has never stopped debating that moment. Should he have walked away? Should he have ignored it? Should he have stayed calm? Perhaps. But to understand that moment, you must understand the man. The same fire that drove his brilliance was the same fire that occasionally consumed him. It wasn't separate from his greatness. It was part of it. Calm on the ball. Fire in the soul. Football has produced players with greater pace, greater power, greater goal-scoring records. But football has rarely produced anyone who could control a match. Quite like Zinedine Zidane. He didn't chase the game. The game followed him. He didn't force greatness. He inspired it. Every first touch, every roulette, every impossible pass, every unforgettable performance. Football remembers the headbutt. It should also remember everything that came before it. The elegance, the vision, the leadership, the artistry, the moments that made millions fall in love with football. Because legends are never defined by one mistake. They're defined by a lifetime of greatness. Calm on the ball. Fire in the soul. That was Zinedine Zidane. And that is why he will always remain a true footballing icon. Not because he played the game differently, but because he made the world's hardest game look impossibly beautiful. What is your favorite Zinedine Zidane moment? And that brings another incredible week of football history to a close. 7 legends. 7 unforgettable stories. 1 beautiful game. If you've enjoyed this collection, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with a fellow football fan. It really helps more people discover true footballing icons. Every like, every comment, every share and every subscription helps keep these stories alive for the next generation of supporters. Football changes. Players come and go. Records are broken. New stars emerge. But true footballing icons are never forgotten. Their moments live on. Their greatness inspires. Their legacy lasts forever. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this journey. We'll be back next week with more legendary players, more unforgettable moments, and more stories from the greatest game ever played. Until then, keep football's greatest memories alive. And we'll see you in the next episode of True Footballing Icons.